Good morning. Welcome to The Usual Suspects. Great to have you with us on this Sunday morning. No Robin this morning, but it's okay. We replaced her with a Democrat. Gary Jordan, Steve Vancor, Sean Pittman, and U.S. Senate candidate Jeff Green. Nice to have you up in town.
Thank you for having me.
Because of mail every 2 days, people recognize you.
Yeah,
Well,
Yes. If you're a Democrat, you know
you
you're
can go
free.
anywhere now.
well, I guess maybe I can't go anywhere now.
yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Well, have you been, I mean, when you put the kind of money you have put into this race, it has worked in terms of name recognition. I mean, you have covered and people do recognize you. And I'm sure that's a phenomenon you're seeing wherever you go.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, look, this is not about name recognition, though. This is about getting elected to the United States Senate because I care deeply about the direction our country is heading, and I want to make a change.
Well, we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to talk about kind of the phenomena of the campaign and those kind of issues, but I think it is a little bit about name recognition.
At this point, yeah, with all
Oh, yeah.
undecided voters, they're going to go in there and they're going to go, who do I like better? Who do I know? And what's surprising with all the communications, record numbers of expenditures, there's still 30–40% undecided across the board in every race.
Yeah, well, in your race, they're saying at least 25–30% undecided.
Yes, and another statistic which I found interesting in a poll I saw recently was that almost 50% of those that had decided say they'd consider changing their mind.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're decided either.
And you got in sort of late in the race, so name recognition was very important because you had to do what you needed to do to make sure that people at least knew your name when they went to the polls.
Yeah, Sean, I get it on the very last day because, and so I've had really 3 months to try to catch up with Kendrick Meek, who's been in Congress for 8 years. Remember, his mother had that seat for 10 years before
Yeah.
that,
Oh,
so it's like 18 years of Meek and 3 months of Jeff Green. So no, it's a big state. It's very it's a lot of work to get your name out.
Well, yeah, but we've gotten enough mail from you. We've now done our den walls are in your mail. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about the phenomenon of this campaign, the rapid rise, the undecided voters, what Jeff Green thinks is going to happen from this point on, and what this crazy last couple days are going to be like. And we will do that with Jeff Green right after this. Stay with us. We're back with Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate, Jeff Green, and we're glad to have him up here in the Panhandle. Yeah, this shows an opportunity for you to communicate with folks in the Panhandle, let them know a little bit more, because they haven't had much of a chance here to actually hear from you personally. But you asked in the break kind of a provocative question. Go ahead.
Well, you're sitting there one day and you decide, you know, I want to be in the U.S. Senate, and you have incredible wealth. I got to tell you, I'll back up a second. I'm always impressed with people who stand up and say the king has no clothes. And you apparently stood up one day and said the entire entourage has no clothes. And that, as someone in real estate, you said this ain't going to last, this ain't going to work. I'm going to run against the crowd here, which is a pretty remarkable story from your blue-collar background and everything. But what was it? Here you are, enormously wealthy, very successful at what you do, and then you decide. What was that moment?
Well, you know, there's a couple of aspects to that question. I was raised in Massachusetts in a very strong Democratic family, and my first senator was John F. Kennedy, and that was the first presidential election. I remember when I was a 6-year-old kid. I remember in 1960, Kennedy beat Nixon. And growing up in the shadow of the Kennedys, you kind of are taught that if you ever make a lot of money, what you're supposed to do is either get into philanthropy or public service. So in the back of my mind, I always thought, hey, you know, if I ever really get rich and I don't need to make money anymore, I'll do something to get back to society. And then probably one of the telling things was I got married later in life, and we had a baby 10 months ago. So you know, thank you. And you met my wife earlier; she just left you. But you know, when my wife got pregnant, I started really focusing maybe a little further ahead in time and thinking, hey, you know what? Where is this country going? And I'm looking and I'm thinking we're going straight downhill. I mean, we're a country which doesn't have an industrial policy, we haven't had an energy policy, we haven't had an immigration policy. And as a result, this country is going straight down the tubes. And I just said, you know what, I can sit in the back row like I've done my whole life and just let these guys destroy this great country that has provided me the opportunity to really live the American dream in every sense of that expression. Mm-hmm. Or I can get involved and you know, try to go on this log job interview around Florida and see if the people of Florida will like me enough to give me a chance to go to the Senate and represent them and try to get some new results for the people of Florida.
You all, this race has been one of the more negative and contentious races that are out there. Mm-hmm. And there's been quite a lot of questions about how you made money. And on the other side, you question how Kendrick Meek has served. I mean, for our viewers' purposes and hearing from you, I mean, can you talk a little bit about? I mean, we won't get in your business. I mean, the way you make money is the way you make money, but there is some concern out there that you made money on the backs of people who lives have been traumatized.
Right. Well,
I mean, and you should be able to discuss that on your own.
No, I am completely open about. I have no secrets. When you're a businessman and a high-profile businessman like I am, I have no secrets, and I'm not interested in having any secrets. Look, I started with absolutely nothing. We grew up middle class in Massachusetts. My dad lost his livelihood when I was just a teenager. Parents moved to West Palm Beach with really nothing. My mom took a job as a waitress. My dad drove a vending truck, you know, and it was tough having once owned his own business. And I went to work my way. I was a busboy in college. I worked my way through Johns Hopkins University. I graduated before I was 20 in economics. Then I went on to Harvard Business School to get my MBA. And when I was at Harvard Business School, I bought an old three-decker. It's what they call the three-family houses there in Boston. The thought was I'll live in one for rent-free, and the 2 rents will cover the mortgage payment, and then when I'm done, I can sell the house and get my money back. That was the whole idea, never thinking it would be a career. Well, it worked out really well. By the time I was done at Harvard, I had 18 properties that accumulated around Boston.
Wow. While you were in college?
While I was at Harvard Business, while I was getting my MBA at Harvard, which is a tough program.
Yeah.
But I was buying and selling them and showing apartments and renting them. Anyway, I stayed in real estate, and I have to tell you, from that one 3-unit building, I ended up with 8,000 apartments. It took 30 years. It was a rocky road. And, you know, I achieved a net worth just south of $1 billion. And what happened was, in around 2006, I saw what was happening in the economy and the housing market. I could see that we were in a bubble, and I was determined not to see it happen to me, what happened to my dad, and lose what I'd worked for my whole life, and the jobs that I'd created, and the mouths I was feeding in my business. So I was able to find a way on Wall Street to effectively buy protection against my portfolio. I did it. I made a lot. I made some extra money. I didn't make all my money. I just made more money than I'd already made before. But I already was very, you know, I was already had a humbling amount of success before that, and I made this extra money. And you know what? It was. I only wish I'd been in the Senate, so I could have been pounding the table there and on the same matters.
Actually, you're kind of getting to something that I had noticed recently. I wasn't crazy about your early media. I thought it was just too aggressive. I thought it was too hard, and I don't think it gave us a chance.
I didn't like it either.
But the recent media that you've put out, your own television commercials, is you calmly sitting back and telling this story in a way that I think does register. I think finally we're getting a chance to hear you say, yeah, I did it, and this is it, and this is how it happened, and this is what my family background was like. And I think that the new messaging is finally resonating. Now, whether it happens too late or not is something we'll find out in about a week. But was there a conscious decision? Right, right, in a couple days.
A couple days from the hearing.
Was there a conscious decision in the campaign? Was there a moment where you guys said, it's time we just kind of let folks know who you were a little bit more than the early image stuff?
By the way, the irony here is Rick Scott's opening salvo of commercials were fabulous and
right,
captivating.
And you sort of captured that at the end.
And he was like, wow, and where yours started out.
A little rough.
We're sorry, we talked too much about the politics of it, but it was a little rough. Like, who is this guy? Who is he? You let Kendrick define you, and now you're ending. This story has not been told effectively in the mass communication.
Yeah, but in his commercials, I got to tell you, I felt real good about the last commercials I saw. So was there a conscious decision?
Well, I can just tell you this. If the new media consultant hears this show, he's going to ask for a raise. But we used a different media consultant who I think kind of just, we were always trying to tell my story. I think that the guys who work with
20 seconds here.
Yeah, the guys who work with now, I think just were able to get it across better. But the story hasn't changed. It's just we were probably not telling it in the best way possible at the beginning.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to a little bit more specific about what Jeff Green wants to bring to the U.S. Senate, and we will do that with him right after this. We're back with Jeff Green, and I think it's a provocative statement that you made a few minutes ago when you said, had you been in the U.S. Senate instead of in private enterprise when this all happened, you'd have been representing the people of Florida on this mortgage bubble and looking at it entirely different. Is that what you think you bring to the table here?
By the way, how would the world be different if whether it was Greenspan or whomever said,
Yeah.
hold the show.
Right, yeah.
If they knew what you knew.
Yeah.
I would have been able to sell my house by now. That's how it would have been different.
Well, look, I think the crazy thing is everyone did know what I knew. I mean, I've been called a genius and brilliant, like, because I anticipated this. How did you know? I said, well, I just looked at the cover of Time magazine where it said housing bubble bursting, or the cover of The Economist, housing crashing soon. I mean, we all knew that it was a bubble. I mean, who did not have a friend? Who didn't have a friend who said, I'm going to retire because my house is going to go up another 20% a year for the next 10 years and I'll live off my house? Who didn't get in a taxi? And I talked to a taxi driver who was telling me that he's flipping condos. I mean, we all knew this was a big thing. And I think it's the failure of Washington, because the only reason we had a housing bubble, in my humble opinion, is because lenders made loans to people that they shouldn't have been making them to. Some of these subprime loans to borrowers that they knew or should have known would have no ability to pay them back. And to me, what happened was Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which, by the way, still are not regulated in this financial regulation bill. They're still out there doing whatever they're doing. And they were making loans to people, and it created this crazy bubble. And then and I think that so many people were living off the power. But specifically, Congressman, look, I'm running against Kendrick Meek, who has alleged that I'm responsible for the housing bubble. He's been in Congress while this all happened. He accepted money from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and he didn't regulate them. And so what happened was, as far as I'm concerned, our elected officials in Washington just allowed our housing market to become a big casino. I don't think Americans suddenly woke up in the 2004 and said, we're now greedy and we're now greedy speculators. I think what happened was the government didn't regulate the banks, and it just created this crazy casino, and a housing bubble happened. And that's one thing in Washington. I think the problem I see in Washington, from my view, is there's no, look, I can't see around a corner. Nobody can, but you can sort of guess what's around the corner. The problem is, look at immigration as an example. Now we're going to have immigration reform after there are 12 million immigrants here. Look at the financial bubble. Now we're going to regulate Wall Street after it crashes. After the environmental issues. Let's clamp down on environmental issues now that BP has an oil spill. Instead of looking ahead and thinking, and as a businessman, I've always held people accountable. I always try to think what's around the corner and try to make good decisions, and that's what I hope to bring to the U.S. Senate.
And that's a great thing to listen to, because it's like you're expecting the people who might make money off of it to change it. Instead, it should be the government that stepped in at some point, saw it coming, and made a change.
Well, in fact, if you look at the government the opposite way, turning homes literally into ATMs. I mean, people I knew didn't have a lot of money, but said, well, I have a lot of home equity, I'm going to go ahead and spend it, we're going to get a new car, we're going to go on vacation with it. That at some point was what I think led to a lot of that.
Well, yeah, Steve, what's even worse than that, no one talks about this, which has had a much bigger effect on people, is that because of this housing bubble, in addition to all the homeowners that are in foreclosure and have lost their homes, there's a secondary effect which no one talks about, which is, for a decade, Americans stopped saving. And now Americans are sitting to bet, and that's why we can't get out of this recession today. Everyone's saying, how come with all the stimulus, no one's spending money? They're not spending money because all of America was on a spending binge the last decade, because they thought they were just going to retire from the equity in their homes.
Right.
And so it caused a behavior change, which to me is now going to prevent us from getting out of this slowdown. It's going to be make it more difficult for us to get out of this slowdown. It's going to mean we have to have a lot more aggressive government programs, in the way of incentives to businesses to get people working again, because the consumer is broke.
I know we don't have much more time.
You got about 30 seconds.
There's so much negative stuff in the campaign. We like to do this on the show. Will you say something good about your opponent?
Look, absolutely. I've met Kendrick before I got in this race. He's a perfectly nice guy. I have nothing against him personally. I think he means well. It's just in this race, it's a very clear choice. More of the same, because Kendrick's been there before. We know where we are in this country. We know the results we've had, or some try an outsider like me who's created jobs and will get results.
I have to wonder if you fall just short, if you're not going to be haunted by the fact that it's only been in the last couple weeks that we seem to be getting to know Jeff Green. And what might have happened if we had seen this Jeff Green 2 months ago. I just put it on the table.
Yeah. That'll keep you awake for the rest of the week.
It's real. I mean, the Jeff Green we're seeing now.
So in other words, you've already voted.
No, I haven't. But I'm just saying the Jeff Green we're seeing now seems to be a much more approachable Jeff Green than we saw early on. But thanks for being.
Thanks a lot for coming up.
We're going to ask you to leave so we can talk about you when you're gone.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We'll be
Actually,
right back.
I want to talk about some investments. I hope you